Don't be scared, my fellow creeps and other creepy peeps. Come on in to the library of Horror Hotel, where we'll take a few minutes out of our busy week of worrying about things that don't matter and focus our attention just briefly on the great world of Halloween masks. Now, I've enjoyed over the years most of the horror franchises. I've seen, most of the movies, all the different series, the franchises, everything from going back to the old Frankenstein and Mummy movies to the more recent franchises like of the 80s, all the Jason and Freddy movies and all that stuff. I've seen most of the series, even the modern, very modern stuff like the Conjuring movies and the Annabelle movies and the Nun movies and all that stuff. I enjoyed most of that stuff to some extent, greater or lesser extent, but the Phantasm franchise has always been special to me ever since I first saw the first movie, which came out back in 1979, 8 or 9. Made in 8, released widely in 9, I think. But anyway, what a great movie that was, because one of the many great things about the first Phantasm is that most of the time when you watch scary movies, or any kind of movies really, they look like the last movie you saw. They look like the movie that Hollywood made money with recently, in a year or two ago. They look the same and they very slowly change. Not Phantasm. That one did not look like other movies of the late 70s. It had entirely its own voice, so I respect it for that. And yes, I know there are some flaws in the Phantasm franchise in terms of, it can be argued that in the course of 5 entire movies, not one thing has happened that made a bit of sense. I'll be the first one to admit that, and yet I enjoy those movies a lot. So I was pleased to hear that Trick or Treat got the rights to do some Phantasm masks. Among them, you ready for this? Everybody calls these guys the Phantasm Dwarfs. Everybody says dwarfs, Phantasm Dwarf. They're not really dwarfs, are they? Which makes me think of the dictionary. I'd like to have a word with the dictionary, if I may. Hey, the dictionary, why do we need 2 pluralizations of dwarf? Why is it sometimes Snow White and the 7 dwarfs with an S, and sometimes the 7 dwarves with a VE? Why do we need 2? This is why people in foreign countries don't understand Americans. But anyway, moving right along, they're not really dwarfs in Phantasm or dwarves. They're compressed corpses, compacted. They're like mini zombies. Anyway, in 2024, Trick or Treat Studios finally came out with masks that humans could buy and own of what they call Lurkers. The Phantasm Lurkers. That's the official franchise word for what the little 3-foot tall zombie demon guys are. They're not really referred to as dwarfs, even though everybody says that. They're just Lurkers. And why is that? Well, they enjoy their lurk, They work a 7-day lurk week, and there you go. You got to enjoy a man who throws himself into his lurk, right? Look at these guys. Now, there were a bunch of them in the various sequels with different faces. I don't know why Trick or Treat chose to make 2 that are so near identical when there were other different ones in there. There was one that looked like a little old man, and one that looked like a little old lady, and one with a big wide mouth. But anyway, I used to own a couple of screen used mold copies from original molds, and I can tell you there were a bunch of them over the course of the different movies. But the 2 that they have chosen to do are almost the same. And they had a problem coming up with titles for them because they ended up being called, I'm reading from the tag here, which by the way is extremely cool because it has a Phantasm poster reproduction in miniature right on the tag. You gotta love that. This one is called Evil Lurker. They're all evil, okay? And this one is called, I believe, Minion Lurker. Is that correct? Yes, Minion Lurker. Well, they're all evil and they're all minions, so that's not very helpful. They might as well have called them, Thing 1 and Thing 2, or Lurker A and Lurker B, or Lurker with his mouth almost closed and his teeth bared but his teeth touching, and Lurker who looks about the same except his mouth is slightly open and his teeth are slightly parted. But I suppose there wasn't room to fit all that on the tag, so they didn't use all that. But the great thing about these, sculpted by an artist named Russ Lukich, by the way, the great thing about these is that if you saw pictures of them online or at some such place, you might have thought, I'll bet those masks are going to be chintzy. I bet they're going to be made of chintz. You might have thought. You might have thought you're just going to get like a little rubber face, and then it'll have the cloth hood, and it won't want to hang right, and it won't want to display right, and it'll be real cheap, and it'll just be a little face mask. Don't blame me for thinking that, but Trick or Treat, I think, has done what they needed to do this time and made a full head. Look at this. You get a full head mask under there, and the detail continues, as you can see on the back, the wrinkles and stuff, even where it isn't really needed. I don't know that in any of those movies we ever saw them without their hoods. Maybe at some point. I don't remember such a scene. But anyway, these guys are full head masks, which means they're easy to display. And I think this was a good call too. The fabric hoods, and you got to have the hoods because they're always wearing the hoods and they look kind of like Jawas in the Phantasm movies. You got to have the hood, but the hood is not really attached to the mask, you see. The only thing holding it on there is that little plastic annoyance connected to the tag. That's the only thing holding the hood to the mask. And why do I think it's okay that the hood's not attached? Well, if you wanted to wear a costume, or your kids who are 3 feet tall, hopefully, would be better suited. They want to wear a costume. Or if you want to build figures for your haunted museum or your horror display or something, if you want to build figures, you're going to have a robe that's made of the same thing the hood is made of. And unless you can find this exact, precise matching fabric, it would look distracting to have a different kind of hood from the robe. But if you just want to display them on your shelf in your mask collection, you can leave the hoods that are on there. Or if you want to make a full costume or a full body display figure, you can use whatever fabric your robe and hood might be made of. And I didn't do anything to the paint job on these guys. The paint jobs are like, they're adequate. They're not wonderful, but I think that's okay in this case because you don't get a good look at them in the movies, and there isn't a lot of detail to be painted in them. There isn't that much going on. They're just scary little angry faces. And I think this gets the job done. Yeah. If you wanted, I suppose you could go back and add some airbrushing to give it more depth of shadow and such. But it's not really necessary that you do that because they look pretty good right out of the bag. I kind of thought, when I saw them, I thought, gee, Trick or Treat missed the boat. Here they should have come out with 7 of them. Not 2, there should have been 7 of them. Could have had Tall Man and the 7 Dwarfs. What's wrong with that? They could have had so many that we would have to collect them, and all the collectors would have to buy 7 of them then, instead of just having to buy 2. That sounds like a smart business move right there. And of course, you could give them names that way. Instead of Minion and Evil, you could give them proper names like Chompy and Stompy and Wompy and Slashy and Bashy and Fred. Yeah. Anyway, this one is not Fred. I don't know. I think this one. Oh, he says he's Bitey. This is Bitey. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, yeah, Chompy and Stompy. That's what I call. And I was startled to find carved into the sculpture in the back of the mask, you can see is the word, or the name rather, Chomper. So I was close. I was in the ballpark. Okay, not the ballpark. I was in the cemetery. I admit it. I was in the cemetery. But that's near the ballpark, you know. Chomper. And, I didn't even look to see if this other one had. Let's see what his name is. Oh, yeah, his name is Sloth. This is Sloth and Chomper, also known as Evil Lurker and Minion Lurker. and not necessarily in that order. And I recommend them from the folks at Trick or Treat. These sell for around 60 bucks a piece, and you're getting a full head mask that's pretty nice and has a neck and has a full back of the head and everything. And you get a fabric hood for display. And if you don't like the style of the fabric hood because you want to use something big and, you know, more substantial fabric, you're okay, because it isn't fastened. It isn't like glued or sewn to the mask anywhere. You can take it off and put your own hood on there. And if you're 3 feet tall, or if you can, you know, do the thing where you walk on your knees and put shoes on your knees like when Tim Conway used to do Dwarf, you're all set to scare humans at Halloween. So that's it for today from here at the Mask Fan at what? Oh, I mean, from here at Hassle Castle, what? I mean, from here at Creepy Cheapies. Until next time, remember, a wet bat never flies upside down over the Mediterranean except on a Thursday with a woman named Louise. Good day.